It may seem like this footage is from the dash cam of two ordinary travelers driving the wrong way into a storm. But these aren't average passerbys, and this isn't a normal tornado.
I was scared too. I was scared too.
These are Alan Gwynn and James Anderson, professional storm chasers pursuing the El Reno tornado of May 31st, 2013, a storm unlike anything the modern scientific era had ever seen. This was the first tornado in history to kill professional storm chasers, and it didn't take one. It took 4. Because the nature of this storm challenged everything the experts knew: its behavior, its scale, its motion. To understand why El Reno became the most confounding and catastrophic chase in meteorological history, we have to start the day from the beginning. Evening light fades over central Oklahoma, the kind that turns the prairie gold, before the sky decides it's had enough of being gentle. No one knows yet that within the hour, the atmosphere will build a vortex wider than any the planet has ever measured. 2.6 miles across, an entire town spun into motion. The story of El Reno isn't just about wind speeds or radar numbers. It's about how even the most seasoned chasers, scientists, and families found themselves staring at something so vast that perspective itself failed. The storm didn't just break records, it broke assumptions. People still describe that moment in disbelief. How a single cloud base swallowed the horizon. How it looked more like the sky collapsing than a tornado forming. That voice, captured on camera, belongs to a chaser who thought he was filming from a safe distance. He wasn't. None of them were. The 2013 tornado season had already left Oklahoma raw. Just 11 days earlier, an EF5 tornado in Moore tore apart neighborhoods and killed 24 people. The recovery wasn't even half complete when forecasters warned of another, particularly dangerous situation. By late May, storm chasers from across the country had converged on the plains. This was the proving ground, the place where every May either rewards patience or punishes arrogance. Residents of El Reno, a quiet community 25 miles west of Oklahoma City, were used to sirens, but not the kind that send half the city fleeing and half racing toward the storm. That afternoon, both traffic and tension built. Cars lined Reno Road and US 81 as locals tried to decide whether to stay home or run. It wasn't panic yet, but it wasn't calm either.
Okay, because it is a big son of a bitch, and we're on it. All right, I'll holler at you later. Bye.
So about the southern.
I don't know where the hell I'm at. He said it's north of him. So
County, on into Oklahoma County.
Look at the inflow. Get on up. Get on up. He's gone. You're gonna have to get up.
Let me move this here.
There it is. There it is again. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
That mix, curiosity and fear, would prove deadly once the storm began to move. To understand how afraid people were on May 31st, you have to remember what happened just 11 days earlier. On May 20th, the city of Moore, only 20 miles away, was shredded by a violent EF5 tornado. It carved a 14-mile path through neighborhoods, schools, and medical centers. 24 people were killed, hundreds were injured. Thousands lost their homes. Recovery wasn't just ongoing, it had barely begun. Streets were lined with splintered lumber. Insurance tents popped up beside piles of refrigerators, mattresses, and broken walls. People were still finding debris in their yards that week. Some were still searching for missing pets. Others were still trying to replace cars or salvage documents. So when May 31st arrived, Oklahoma wasn't just weather aware, it was hurting, raw, and exhausted. Emergency managers were running on fumes. Many had worked 12 days straight. Local fire stations had volunteers sleeping in hallways. Hospitals were still treating injuries from Moore. Even meteorologists admitted privately they were emotionally drained, and the community felt it. That's why so many people decided to flee by car when warnings approached later that evening. They remembered the power of the Moore EF5. They didn't want to stay put and hope for the best. They wanted to run. But running became one of the most dangerous decisions of that day. Highways jammed. Rural roads are bottlenecked, intersections locked up as people panicked, trying to escape a storm that moved faster than traffic could. The trauma from Moore shaped the choices people made on May 31st, and those choices shaped the outcome. That's the thing about tornado disasters. The atmosphere writes the threat, but human memory writes the response. And this time, both forces collided. Back to 31st of May. By late afternoon, the atmosphere over central Oklahoma had become a loaded weapon waiting for a trigger. Meteorologists call this setup a loaded gun sounding. It means warm, heavy air near the ground was trapped beneath a lid of dry air high above. Pressure building hour after hour with nowhere to escape. Eventually, the lid would burst, and when it did, the sky would explode. On May 31st, surface temperatures in central Oklahoma soared into the 80s. Dew points sat in the upper 60s to lower 70s. Convective available potential energy values, also known as CAPE, exceeded 5,000 joules per kilogram. Fuel levels more common in the tropics than the plains. Wind shear was modest, but the CAPE alone meant that if rotation ever formed, it could feed indefinitely. By mid-afternoon, the Storm Prediction Center issued a particularly dangerous situation tornado watch. 90% chance of multiple tornadoes. 70% chance of at least one strong or violent tornado. Those are the kind of numbers that make veteran forecasters swallow hard.
Just take your immediate tornado precautions. This is a very dangerous storm.
At 3:30 p.m., the watch went public. By 4, towering cumulonimbus began to erupt west of El Reno. To anyone watching radar, it was the moment the loaded gun cocked. Every storm season has a day when it feels like the whole weather world is in one place. May 31st, 2013 was that day. Dozens of storm chasers, some scientists, some thrill seekers, filled the back roads around El Reno. Among them was a man universally respected for doing things the right way, Tim Samaras. Tim wasn't chasing for spectacle. He was a self-taught engineer who built metal pods to measure pressure and wind from inside tornadoes. His goal was simple but profound: to give people more warning time by understanding what happens inside the funnel. With him were his son Paul and meteorologist Carl Young, forming the Twistex team, along with friends like Dan Robinson and the Weather Channel crew led by Mike Bettis. They had no way of knowing that this would be Tim's last chase. For now, the atmosphere was textbook and promising, the kind of setup scientists dream of sampling and hope never turns fatal. Just after 6 o'clock, a dark lowering appeared beneath the storm's base, an ominous wall cloud 5 miles south of El Reno. Rotation tightened. At 6:03 p.m., a funnel touched down near Reuter Road. At first, it looked manageable. A classic wedge tornado, broad but defined. Then the base flattened, and the whole structure seemed to spread sideways instead of downward. Veteran chasers began to realize they weren't looking at a simple cone, but a tornado cyclone. An enormous circulation filled with smaller tornadoes swirling within. Inside that shroud were suction vortices packing winds well beyond E5 strength. But the fastest winds missed sturdy structures, leaving damage that looked more like EF2 or EF3. It would be the most controversial rating in modern storm history. But what looked like several tornadoes was actually one colossal beast disguised as many, and it was about to grow bigger. To understand why El Reno became such a deadly maze, you have to understand what made it structurally unique. Most tornadoes have a clear funnel, a single condensed core you could see. But El Reno wasn't a single funnel. It was a tornado cyclone, a massive, swirling circulation with multiple tornadic vortices hidden inside it. Imagine a spinning carousel, but instead of horses, there are smaller tornadoes whipping around the outer edge at terrifying speeds. That's what chasers were up against. Inside the tornado cyclone, sub-vortices spun like drills. These are compact, violent violent cores capable of producing winds exceeding 250 to 300 miles per hour, even if the broader tornado appears weaker. They form, intensify, and dissipate in seconds. They're unpredictable, invisible in rain, and lethal. Mobile radar later confirmed that one subvortex was responsible for the Weather Channel vehicle slip. Another was responsible for the deaths of Tim, Paul, and Carl. These weren't secondary tornadoes. They were high-speed vortices orbiting the main circulation. And radar didn't catch all of them. When tornadoes grow as wide as El Reno, 2.6 miles across, radar beams can overshoot key parts of the storm, missing small but violent features. So while chasers thought they were a mile from the edge, they were actually inside a much larger circulation. This is why El Reno challenged the entire meteorological community. It revealed blind spots in radar interpretation. It showed the danger of relying on visual cues in rain-wrapped storms. And it proved that the EF scale, based on damage, cannot always reflect true wind speeds. El Reno wasn't just big. It was complex, layered, deceptive. And inside that deceptive structure were the forces that changed tornado science forever. As the storm strengthened, Oklahoma City television crews broadcast live with an urgency felt more like war coverage than weather. Gary England's voice on KWTV broke through homes across the state.
Okay, I'm just going to talk to the folks. This is a tornado emergency, of course, from the parts of the El Reno area on into Yukon.
On the ground, roads around El Reno erupted into gridlock. Some drivers headed south toward the Canadian River, only to find bridges narrow or closed. Others tried to turn east toward Yukon and Bethany. It was a traffic nightmare in a storm that moved faster than they could. Chasers found themselves hemmed in by panic and rain. Visibility fell to zero. Radar images showed a massive debris ball stretching nearly 2 miles wide. This was no ordinary twister. It was a rotating weather system on the ground.
If it's on top of you, you can't outrun it. I mean, if it's on top of you, very close to you, don't try it. It's a massive, massive circulation. The wind speeds on Doppler radar continue to be something like I really have never seen before. So this is a tremendously strong storm. It is a life-threatening storm.
That line from live television would become haunting foreshadowing. Many tried to outrun it anyway. At 6:15 p.m., the tornado did something almost no one expected. It turned south. For chasers positioned to its east, that meant the storm was suddenly coming towards them. Then, within minutes, it pivoted northeast and accelerated from 20 miles per hour to over 55. Rain bands whipped around the circulation, erasing all sense of depth. It looked slow, but it wasn't. People who thought they were a mile away were inside it. That deceptive motion would trap some of the best meteorological minds on Earth. In the span of minutes, a tornado larger than downtown Dallas spun across the Oklahoma plains. Its forward speed and diameter meant that for those in its path, there was no edge. The sky itself was turning. 6:19 p.m. The Weather Channel convoy is struck first. A subvortex hitting them with hurricane-force winds. Their vehicle rolls hundreds of yards across a field. Miraculously, everyone survives. Mike Bettis later says he felt weightless inside the spinning SUV. They radio for help. A few miles east, Dan Robinson and the TwistX team drive along Router Road. They see the dark mass behind them, but can't judge distance or speed. They continue east for data collection, seconds from disaster. At 6:23 p.m., a powerful subvortex within the main tornado swings north and directly over their vehicle. It hovers for 22 seconds, blasting 200-mile-per-hour winds. The white Chevy Cobalt is thrown half a mile. Tim Samaras, Paul Samaras, and Carl Young die instantly. The transmission from nearby troopers captures the moment of realization that they're going to die. Then came silence. For a community that had long believed science and experience could outwit nature, it was a gut punch. In the aftermath, chasers everywhere pulled over, listening to scanner traffic in disbelief. If Tim Samaras could be killed by a tornado, anyone could. Just before 6:20 p.m., the Weather Channel team, led by meteorologist Mike Bettis, tried to escape south of US 81. They thought the road would lead them out of harm's way. Instead, it puts them in the direct path of the inner circulation. In seconds, pressure collapsed, glass exploded inward, and the vehicle lifted from the ground. It tumbled across a field like a crumpled can coming to rest, hundreds of yards away. For those listening live in Atlanta, the network's control room went silent. Producers called and called. No answer. Viewers who'd been watching radar one moment stared at a blank feed the next. Minutes later, the battered crew crawled out of the wreckage, dazed but alive. Their SUV looked like aluminum foil peeled open by a fist. Bettis later said he'd never felt such weightlessness, like floating inside a rolling car while the world spun around him. The experience forced even the pros to reconsider what safe distance really meant. The El Reno tornado wasn't something you could flank. It was something that surrounded you. At roughly 6:28 p.m., as warnings screamed across every frequency, a second vortex appeared, rotating in the opposite direction. An anticyclonic satellite tornado, an extremely rare phenomenon, spun counterclockwise just southeast of the parent circulation. For 15 minutes, the two tornadoes danced, a gigantic pair, one right-handed, one left-handed, orbiting in chaotic grace. Radar analysts in Norman were stunned. They had never seen a mirror image companion survive this long beside a violent tornado. For chasers still mobile, the sight was terrifying. The satellite raced around the main vortex with a forward speed near 175 miles per hour, almost faster than the vehicles could keep pace. To anyone caught between them, there was no up or down, just a horizon erased by rotation. Nature, for that quarter hour, became a mirror of itself. When the mobile Doppler-on-wheels truck scanned the core at 6:28 p.m., it registered 135 meters per second, or roughly 302 miles per hour, winds rivaling any ever measured on Earth. And yet, when the National Weather Service later assessed the aftermath, they found that no well-built structures had taken a direct hit. By the strict rules of the enhanced Fujita scale, El Reno could be rated only EF3. That decision ignited debate across the meteorological world. Many argued that rating a 302-mile-per-hour storm EF3 felt absurd. Others countered that science must follow evidence, not awe. The paradox of El Reno became a case study in how we define strength, by the numbers we record or the lives it takes. At its peak width of 2.6 miles, the tornado covered an area larger than Manhattan's entire lower half. It roared across Interstate 40, shredding pavement markings and flipping semis like toys. Drivers who had stopped under overpasses realized too late that overpasses act as wind tunnels. 2 people died on the interstate itself, one still inside their car, the other thrown from it. For 40 minutes, from 6:03 to 6:43 p.m., the El Reno tornado carved a 16-mile path across Canadian country, then slowly lifted, leaving behind silence that didn't feel real. The funnel dissipated, but the storm did not die. Thunderstorms regenerated along the same boundary through the evening, training over the metro again and again. Between 7 p.m. and dawn, 7 to 12 inches of rain fell over the Oklahoma City area. What began as a tornado disaster turned overnight into a flash flood catastrophe. Roads that had served as escape routes earlier became rivers. Vehicles floated through intersections. Rescue boats replaced patrol cars. By sunrise, floodwaters had claimed more lives than the tornado itself. In the glare of the next day, the true toll of May 31st revealed itself. 8 tornado deaths, 151 injuries, and dozens more from the floods that followed. It was as if the atmosphere, unsatisfied with one record, had written another overnight. When the sun rose on June 1st, investigators traced a debris field 16 miles long and nearly 3 miles wide. Twisted cars lay scattered like dice across wheat fields. A crushed white Chevy Cobalt drew particular attention. Inside it were the remains of Tim, Paul, and Carl. Their deaths stunned the global storm chasing community. These were not reckless adventurers. They were scientists who preached caution and precision. National Geographic grantee Anton Simon launched the El Reno Survey Project, collecting and synchronizing every second of video from that day. Hundreds of angles forming a single 3D reconstruction of the tornado's anatomy. Frame by frame, Simon's team discovered that those hidden subvortices, some only a few hundred yards wide, were the real assassins. At 6:19 p.m., one struck the Weather Channel convoy. 4 minutes later, another barreled into Twistex. Each spun within the broader circulation, unseen by radar, invisible to the human eye behind curtains of rain. Understanding those substructures has since reshaped how forecasters interpret radar velocity data and how chasers judge distance in rain-wrapped storms. Science gained knowledge, but at a cost no one wanted to pay. In the months after El Reno, the meteorological community turned grief into reform. The event exposed gaps in public communication, roadway safety, and chaser coordination. For one, too many people fled in cars. Highways jammed with traffic, not just from residents, but from hundreds of amateur chasers. The National Weather Service later urged the public, shelter in place if you cannot reach safety quickly. Vehicles are not protection. Within the research world, El Reno catalyzed updates to the enhanced Vegeta scale methodology and pushed for more use of mobile radar and in situ probes rather than relying solely on building damage. It also prompted discussions about ethics. How close is too close when science shades into spectacle? The chaser community, once defined by rivalry, began to police itself, encouraging formal training and better real-time coordination with the NWS. 10 years on, every warning polygon, every radar signature carries a bit of El Reno's legacy. What changed most that day was perspective. El Reno reminded everyone that behind every data point lies a life. A decade later, travelers driving west from Oklahoma City can still turn down a quiet rural road near Router and find a modest memorial, a small cross, a plaque, and tokens left by those who chase storms, not for thrill, but for truth. License plates from old chase vehicles, flowers faded by sun, and a paper sack containing burgers, the same kind the Twistex team kept for good luck. Standing there, the prairie feels impossibly calm. Grass bends in a breeze that on any other day would be meaningless, but here, every gust feels like memory. The horizon still bears faint scars